Got it, David? Adults coming in.
Tell me when you see us back online.
Okay. It's back, I think. Yeah.
That stupid thing overheated.
Whoops, that's crazy. Yeah, it's back on.
Okay, I see it. We're back online. Okay, very good. Are we streaming fast enough? Is it looking okay?
Well, the adult flew by, but I don't know where he went.
1 second. We're back on camera 1 now. Okay, so I think we were offline shortly. I think what happened is the streaming device overheated. It overheated and stopped. So I hope this won't happen again.
It's all back on.
It's all back on. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly let Kit help me a little bit here because she can watch the stream in parallel. So not sure what happened there. Let me just wait a second. So let's just zoom in. Let's see. Are we? Can you see us live? Can you hear us?
Oh, I have
Yeah,
one.
okay. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, sorry about that. So what happened is, it's so hot here that I think what happened is that the transmitter, which is a Netgear device, overheated and shut down. Okay, that's why we suddenly had a cell phone connection, not because the cell phone connection was lost, but that's one of the technical problems that we still have. I've taken off the back now to improve the heat exchange. Those are just for the technical people here, and turn the whole thing upside down so that the heat can escape on top, because heat rises, right? So hopefully that overheating won't happen again. I apologize for that, but this is what makes it so interesting, right? So I think the most important is we're back online, okay? So I'm just trying to find us, but I'm going to rely on Kit now. Can you see the comments, Kit?
Yeah.
Okay, so Kit can see the comments coming back into, oh, I can see it too now. Okay, so let's go right back to the story. So I was saying hello to everyone on Facebook, and I think then we lost connection, but I do know that we're also back on Facebook. So just have patience. If it suddenly shuts down, I'll do my best to restream and get everything back going, okay? That's just the way things are out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, anyway, so let's go back to our Hawklet. So where is it now? Let me see. Oh yes, it's still there. It's on the outer limb. Yes, David Hancock was just telling me it's on the outer limb, and it is. It's right there on the outer limb. So in the meantime, what I'm going to show, in case you don't know, I'm just going to show you a little bit about the setup and so on. And I'm just going to briefly introduce myself. Just put my hat on and just make sure I look proper. Okay. Okay, so let's just see. Hello everyone. So here we are again. This is day number 2, and very much a warm welcome to all of you. I do hope, sorry, gone again?
No, it's not you.
It's not me. It's not me. Okay, you know what? It's not me. Wait a minute.
Wasn't you in front.
Oh, that wasn't me in front? Wait a minute. Camera 2, camera 1, that wasn't me. You think that wasn't me in front of
Oh,
someone else?
there you. Okay, well.
Okay, I'm going to try again. No, I think... Oh, this is just wonderful. This is so wonderful. She said it wasn't me in front, so maybe this is a live stream that's going on in a parallel universe. I don't know. But anyway, thanks first of all for all your donations.
I wanted to butt in. I know it's not you. You would never wear a hat like that.
You said I would never wear a hat like that. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anyway, wonderful to have you all here. So it's another warm day. It's the second day, and I got 2 cameras here. So in the beginning, you may have seen there's a camera that can really zoom in on the nest, which is absolutely wonderful.
Adult.
And yeah, so she's just saying adult is flying, and so I'm just going to jump out of there. I just wanted to say quickly hello. No, She's no, gone. So I'm just going to show you the surrounding a bit, and thank you so much for being here. If I look a bit thirsty, I am. So this is no... the hat is good because I'm not used to the sun here. Christian, we are on an old screen waiting for... What? Oh, I didn't see that, sorry. Anyway, this was something from Osprey Mama. I have to read that in peace when I get a moment. But it's okay. I think just jump when you are there. Just jump to the new stream. Restart the stream, okay? Especially on YouTube, there may be a muddle up. I don't know. I'm not sure. But I think I can see the comments at least coming in on the new stream, right? So this is the other parallel universe, and it's working, right? So anyway, what's so exciting about this? So those of you who have not been with us yesterday, we were briefly explaining we are near Redding, California. It's very warm, and there is a nest there with 2 eaglets and 1 hawklet. And this seems to be a déjà vu of a wonderful story that we had 2 years ago at the Sydney nest on Vancouver Island in the south, where we had 3 eaglets and we had Spunky, or Stephen Hawking, as they called him. And this one is called Tuffy, right? And Terry was the one who discovered it. And do have a look at the stream yesterday. And I'm also going to get David Hancock to comment a bit more today, so you get a real expert opinion here, biologist, eagle biologist, the best eagle biologist in the world on bald eagles. And he will give you a much more in-depth view of what's going on. So let's hope the stream doesn't break down again. That's the things that can happen out here. I'm just going to swing the camera around a bit so you get an idea of what the setup is, and then we'll go right back to the nest. Okay, so just hang on and enjoy the show. Okay, so let's just drag it around. So first of all, that's the big camera. That's the 800 with a 1.25 teleconverter that is almost at 1000 millimeters, looking at, I think, f7 point something, an incredible optics that makes it possible. So that is camera number 2. I can't show you camera number 1 because it's like grabbing your own hand. You can't do that. And that's the equipment down there. That is the equipment. You can see there's lots of equipment there, and it's so much dust here. It's absolutely incredible, the dust level. I just have to straighten. Hold it 1 second. I just have to straighten the camera a bit. I didn't even manage to do that one. Give me a second. There we go. Now I've leveled it. That's better. And guess who this is? That's David Hancock, of course.
Photographing you.
They're photographing me, who's photographing you, who is, well, to infinity in this universe. This is what we're doing. So that's David Hancock, and he's going to give you some comments later. And we also have us here, surprisingly, Kit. Hi, Kit. Well, Kit's from this area, so it's really wonderful. So it's the 3 of us today, and you can see it's very barren here, for those of you who haven't noticed that. And the nest is right there. So I'm going to zoom in now. And there we go. There's the nest again. And I think the little one is parked on the outside there.
Just about to fly into the middle.
Okay, so David's saying it's just about to fly in the middle. You probably couldn't hear that because the microphone is at the back. So I'm just going to jump over to camera number 2, which I've just shown you, to give you a close-up. So hang on. Okay, so let's try this. Okay, so first of all, those are the 2 eaglets you're seeing. And I'm going to search now and see where he is. There he is, isn't he? Behind there. I think he's behind here. So our little one is still a bit camera shy, although yesterday we did see that he was flapping his wings quite a lot. Isn't that? Oh, tell me when you can see it. Yeah, you can. Okay, yeah, we're swinging over now. It's always a bit of delay. But yes, that's absolutely right. You can hear Dr. Hancock. That's very good. Well, that's fine. He's out on the limb. Yeah. Is David out on the limb or the? or the eaglet, we don't quite know. David and Kit, yes, that's right. That's right. So you are seeing him. Very good. So anyway, yeah, that's the way it is at the moment. So our hawklet is 1 day older and 1 day closer to fledging, whenever that may be. So we don't actually know how rare this is. I mean, David, if you have a moment, yeah, please do. Please do. So I've got at the moment the picture right on the hawklet, and if you don't mind standing next to the microphone, yeah, right there, and just give a little bit of comments, what your observations are, and so on. I think people will be very interesting. So here is David Hancock, eagle biologist.
Well, fine, Christian. The issue is rather an interesting one in that you've got one of the largest North American birds of prey, the bald eagle, and you've got kind of a very mid-sized bird of prey, the red-tailed hawk, both of which who live across North America in very similar habitats. The bald eagle, of course, is a predominantly fish eater, and the red-tailed hawk is predominantly a vole or rodent eater. But it'll pick up birds that are partially fledged and that kind of thing. So it is versatile, but it's not generally a fish eater. And here we've had the unusual circumstance, and it's 3 of them that I've personally been now involved with, where a bald eagle, an adult, has, in a sense, and I'll tell you the different circumstances, has captured a young red-tailed hawk or an egg, and it's taken it back to its nest. And then the red-tailed hawk, and what we think is happening here, the red-tailed hawk has a very, very similar begging sound to the young bald eagle chick. And so one case, we know the adult bald eagle captured a red-tailed hawk that was incubating and actually flew right in, caught it, carried that red tail back to the eagle nest and where it killed it. And this was actually recorded on one of the very first videotapes back in the 1989, somewhere like that. And then it wasn't, of course, seen. The camera was not really tight on the nest, but it was on the outside of the nest. And then when the young red-tailed hawk hatched and started to get fairly big, mid-size, all of a sudden it was showing over the nest. And they'd known that the mother red-tail had been captured and taken to the nest and eaten, so it's pretty likely that she then exuded the egg, and that was at the same period when the bald eagles were sitting on their own eggs, and they then continued to hatch the red-tailed egg, and it hatched. And the begging behavior of the red-tail is very similar to the begging behavior of the bald eagle, and the pair of bald eagles happily raised that other red-tail. That other red-tail had an interesting demise. It was about 3/4 grown, not much different, maybe 4 or 5 days younger than this one, when it kind of got knocked out of the nest by one of the big eaglets that was stretching its wings, and it was hanging down from the nest, underneath the nest, for about 2.5 hours. And the owner of the camera, by this time, got back to Vancouver, back to home from Vancouver, and he got down underneath the nest, and when the red-tail finally let go, they almost caught it. They didn't quite, but it landed in the brush. They got that young red-tail, which wasn't really badly hurt, and took it to OWL, our famous rehabilitation center, where 1 year later it was released. So that was story 1. Then you all know about Hawklet, Stephen Hawking, where he was raised in an eagle nest on Sydney, Vancouver Island, with 3 bald eagles. And we heard about it, went over the next day, and found that there was this one young red-tailed hawk, and we followed it pretty much almost continuously for about the 10 days, 2 weeks that it took to fledge. Now, after it fledged, somebody came and showed us a photo that was taken the day before we got there, and there was clearly 2 red-tailed hawks in the nest. One died, and we only knew of the one all the time we were doing the story. In any case, that young red-tail fledged naturally, It went down on the beach, foraged on the beach with the adult bald eagle. I don't think it learned a lot about how to catch fish along the intertidal zone. But we also released voles and dead roadkill squirrels under the area where it was. And it came down and caught the voles and collected the red tail, or the red squirrels, or gray squirrels. And it turns out we think the bird fledged normally. Now, we didn't ban the bird, so we don't know, but we're always hopeful that it did well. And that was kind of a record. From all the publicity that bird got, we heard of a couple more that were red tails that were raised in nests. And lo and behold, two of our really faithful followers of all the cameras that we have in the Fraser Valley, Terry Lillier and Kit Harvey, lo and behold, here in the where are we? We're in Redding, California. They have a whole series of nests, and Terry was out and saw this nest took photos of it with the two big eaglets, and when she got home, she analyzed the photos in detail, and there was a third head, a red-tailed hawk head. And so she sent us an email and a phone call immediately, and we're down here in 3 days, and we're trying to follow this one and see if this is another case of bald eagles successfully rearing red-tailed hawks. And normally they're competitors. Normally the red-tail is a prey species of bald eagles. But under certain circumstances, which we've now documented 3 times, red-tails can get successfully reared by bald eagles. It's an interesting biological twist. So that's the full kind of story of where we're at today. And how are you doing?
David, and there were some questions here actually
Yep.
on the difference, the time difference. Yeah, that's thank you, Osprey Mama. I just see that wants to know, do red-tail hawks fledge earlier? How does the timing actually work? That's an important one.
There's quite a difference in the bald eagle is very big, and big compared to the red-tail. Bald eagles go 7, 10, 12, 14 pounds. Red-tailed hawks are 2.5 to 3.5, maybe a big one, 4 pounds. So they're quite different, hugely different sized birds. Normally, the bald eagle fledges, makes its first flight on the 83rd or 84th day. The red tails usually fledge, and a little bit more variable, but on 45 to 48 days. So they fledge much younger. So in a sense, they grow faster. It takes the bald eagle longer. Well, for one thing, it has a lot bigger space to fill out and grow into. So certainly the red tail here is much younger in a sense than the bald eagle. The bald eagles here are about 7 weeks old, maybe 7 weeks and 2 or 3 days. And the red tail, I think, is 5 7s or 35, maybe 38 days old, about 37, 38 days. So there's quite a bit of difference in the age of the chicks. Now, we think this red-tailed chick was predated from a red-tailed hawk nest. In other words, the adult bald eagle came in and stole the young red-tail from the red-tailed hawk nest and carried it back to its nest. And then this unusual circumstance happened. It wasn't dead. It was probably grabbed around the wings and just carried into the nest and left. And the next thing the young red-tailed hawk does is beg for food. Well, that in the nest triggers one of these great conflicts that has to happen with all birds of prey. When do they not tear apart a young chick that's in the nest and feed it to their chick, when in a sense the young chick they're tearing apart might also be their chick? Because they pull apart chicks of herons and red tails and so on. And it may well be that there's this safety mechanism that how do they not tear apart their own chick and feed it to the earlier hatching chick? Well, it could be there's a number of signals that are conveyed by chick to parent that says, I'm a chick, I'm not food, don't tear my head off, feed me. And that's the great dilemma facing all birds of prey. How do they know when to feed the chick versus tear its head off and feed it to their other chicks? So it's probably, my theory is that the real strong key here is in the begging sound. And the red tail has this ability to make a sound just very, very similar to the bald eagle.
Yeah, there's some interesting questions coming in. I'm just going to pass this on to David quickly. Where's the hawk right now? We don't see it. Well, I just zoomed in. By the way, I have, you won't believe it's so hot, I have an overheating problem off camera too. These are things that I've never experienced before, so I'm very happy that David Hancock is doing such brilliant narration, because I can take more care of the technical in the background. Just wanted to tell you, if camera 2, that's the big lens, suddenly switches off, it's overheating and I have to switch it back on. But the camera 1 that you're seeing through now is not. So let me just get to the
to answer that question, they asked where the little red-tailed hawk is.
Yes.
He's far out on the limb to the right. He's kind of hiding in the shade you can see him. Okay.
Yeah, we got it.
He's hiding in the shade of some pine branches there. He's seeking the same kind of shade that we're seeking here.
Right. And okay, let me just get you some questions, David. There was one question about, is it not possible, do you ever think it's possible that this couldn't be that a red-tailed hawk has laid an egg in an eagle's nest? That's a question that comes up again and again.
Well, I think the answer is no, not in the sense of the red-tailed hawk laying purposefully an egg in a bald eagle nest. We know that the first incident that I was involved with, indeed, the red-tailed hawk was captured live. They saw it captured, and it was taken back to the eagle's nest, and it was killed and torn apart and eaten. And undoubtedly the egg came out, it was just at that right time, came out of the oviduct and joined the clutch of the eagle eggs, which were already there apparently because they were older, and it was simply incubated along with the 2 slightly bigger eggs. Now, in the Sydney nest, we can only surmise that the chicks were brought in as food because they were certainly much younger, and no red-tailed hawk is going to fly into an eagle's nest with an incubating hen sitting incubating her eagle eggs and tell her to move over and lay her own egg. That's just not a reasonable option to expect. And the same thing, they couldn't have laid the egg earlier because it would have already hatched and been bigger and gone much earlier. So there's not really many theories that kind of stand up to the animal's behavior other than that the eagle predates red tails, whether they're adults or whether they're young. And when they get predated, they're brought back to the nest to feed young or whatever, and that's it. And the mechanism that saves the red tail, we think, is this begging call, sounding just like a young eagle chick.
And another question here from Gentleman Ghost, don't you think that, wait a minute, sorry, no, I got that wrong. Wouldn't it be normal for hawks to be in the same territory as eagles, but how can then hawks survive? That's
well, that's not a difficult question to answer. I have hundreds and hundreds of bald eagle nests in the Fraser Valley, and in the same areas, there's hundreds and hundreds of red-tailed hawks nesting. Red tails and bald eagles overlap the same basic habitats, but they're utilizing different parts of it at different times. Sometimes eagles focus on things that are fish and dead, but they also, as we've seen and photographed a number of times now, follow tractors that are mowing mowing hayfields. And the eagles will come down following the tractors. And as soon as the grass is cut, and where it had been 2 feet thick, tall, it's now 4 inches. And the voles and the mice are running around with no protection above them that they had minutes ago. And the eagles are in behind the tractor grabbing these voles. Now, if it's not an eagle doing that, it's a red-tail doing it. They both share precisely that same food. But when you get 3 or 4 or 5 eagles following a tractor, the red-tail's out of luck. He goes off and tries another field.
There's a very interesting question coming in here from Facebook, so thank you to Susan. Are there cases where an eagle kills an eagle chick to feed another eagle chick? That's an interesting question, so that's more cannibalism.
Yeah, that is. And in California, on one of the Channel Islands, they had, and I'll tell you the second one, we had it on the White Rock nest, but the one in Channel Islands was the parents had about a month-old chicks, 2 in the nest. It was a ground nest, and in one case, it was a fox entered the nest and ate the young red-tail, so that's kind of natural. But in the other case, the mom and dad were off fishing, and another 3-year-old eagle came in and hit and grabbed the one chick, and the month-old chick, 5-week-old chick, was so big and heavy it knocked it out of the nest, but it had to let go of it because it couldn't hold on to it, and the chick fell down. The first one was killed. The eagle circled back and hit and grabbed the second chick, and that one apparently landed better and was actually retrieved, because this was all on a camera. This was on a camera. And the time the people got there, they were able to rescue the second chick. So that was, as you're suggesting, a predation of a young eaglet by another eaglet, but it wasn't an adult eagle, it was by a 3-year-old eaglet.
And there's another interesting question here from Nancy Haas, thank you. Are there other instances of one type of raptor raising another?
Well, this, of course, is one of those. I think there was somebody had suggested that this may have happened with a Cooper's hawk raising a merlin, which is a
Wow.
very small falcon. And they both are forest dwellers, and it could possibly be the same thing. I have not had that verified, but the story came via fairly reliable sources. So it's quite possible. And it's quite possible that Christian and I were just recently in Japan following the Steller sea eagles and the white-tailed sea eagle, and they both nest in fairly similar areas, and they have a bird like the red-tail. It's a rough-leg hawk, same kind of relationship, and there's just not been enough people, I think, watching them in that area, but it's, to my way of thinking, I think it's going to happen that they get to spot the same thing. It's about the number of observations and having a whole bunch of people out there armed with a bit of knowledge and a keen interest, and then they report it to somebody. And so we count on people like you. That's why I'm here. I want you to talk about these things, tell us about them. So something that may be thought impossible or incredibly rare may not be as rare as you might be telling us.
And Glenn Hazel Woody is asking, does this hawk chick not seem afraid of his raptor siblings or parents? That's a great question.
Yeah, well, as we witnessed in the Sydney nest, the little red-tail was so much faster and more nimble, and his big brothers, the eaglets, kept looking down at him as he'd run in, take the food right from their feet and in front of them, and they'd be startled as to wondering what was going on. Then he'd run off in the corner and eat it. Now we're seeing somewhat the same thing here. We're a little farther away. We're about 500 feet away from this nest. It's obvious. I mean, you can see it yourself right now. The young Hawklet is way out as far as he can get right now on to the east on a thin branch. That branch probably would not hold a big eaglet, and he senses that, I am sure. And he'll come in and get food when he needs to, but he's not going to be standing around exposing himself if he doesn't have to. I think that's just, a logical sense of security that predators kind of understand.
And we have him big now on camera too, actually.
Yeah.
You probably can't, I don't know if you can see it with your eyes, David, but yeah, David's just looking now with his binoculars. It's difficult to see because it's behind.
Yeah, behind a branch.
Yeah, you can see it, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I've got it zoomed in, so
Yeah.
so that's great. That's wonderful.
So I think the answer to your question is, yeah, I suspect he feels insecure beside his big brothers because there's always competition, even when it's two eaglets. One eagle, for part of its early life, particularly feeling at risk and at great risk of sibling mortality, or the one young eaglet killing the other. And I think that happens in a lot of birds of prey. And if there's not enough food, the winner is going to be the bully. And they sense that. And he senses that, and it seems pretty obvious. He's sitting out on the end of a limb. That's a security measure.
Yeah, I mean, David, I remember on the Sydney nest we saw quite an incident. As soon as the little one was fledging, they made it more and more difficult for him to come back his siblings made it more and more difficult for him to come back in the nest. You remember that?
Yeah.
They kicked him out, and he still came back.
Yeah, well, that was his food source.
Yeah.
He had to come back for it.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, just keep on with your questions if you have any. I will just switch from one camera to the next. So as you can see, there's not much going on at the moment, but that's wildlife, right?
Well, they're having a rest. It's a hot day to be jumping around out there. It probably will be another 10 degrees cooler in another hour or two, and then they may be certainly more active.
Right, I'm just going to switch again and see if they... Yeah, do come in with your questions if you have to.
I apologize, Christian. I tend to talk with my hands. I think I've knocked the camera a couple of times.
It's actually somewhere else. We're not pointing at the nest.
Well, I might have just hit it.
It doesn't matter. We're right back.
Good.
It's okay.
We're back. Because I'm not looking through the camera. I'm standing above it here, and I felt I nicked it with my finger. Good.
Good, well, we'll just let it stream a bit. We're doing all fine.
Yeah, we've seen the adult sitting on a perch about 150 meters or yards to the west of it, along the shoreline of the lake here. And it had obviously a favored perch there because Terry had seen it in the same tree many times before. In fact, she ended up calling the point on which the tree sat Eagle Point because it was where she could count on. And these birds are all like that. They have favored viewing points. And when we got and looked up at that point from the boat earlier, it was pretty obvious why this is a favored point. The tree sticks out from the shoreline, and so from the one tree, the bird is looking in one bay to the west and one bay to the east. I mean, double the observational areas for potential food, and that's a kind of typical thing that happens. When I've been doing my aerial surveys over the years, one of the things that, as a pilot, is so apparent to me, I learn very quickly in doing repetitive surveys where the favored perches are for these different pairs that I'm following. And what is so obvious, even though when you know the male or the female has changed, the next bird that comes along sits in the same perch year after year, generation after, and the reason is pretty obvious. When you start to fly and you look down, from that particular perch, you command the best view of where food is going to appear. And so people often say, oh, it's got to be the same bird because it's sitting on the same perch. I say, total nonsense. The bird is sitting in that tree because it's the best view of where it's going to find its dinner. So you can't count on just because the bird is sitting in the same tree, it's the same bird. It's could be one of the new pair, or it could be the same bird, or the male or the female.
By the way, hi to Kurt from Rise Raptor Project. Kurt may remember, David is the one who had the connection to Japan,
Yes.
right, with the Stellars,
Yes.
and he is making a comment here. Let me just find it quickly. He says, Osprey Mama, aren't you sure that David and Christian aren't training these eagles to raise hawks? Because so,
Yes, this is our backup program. Yes, in case red-tailed hawks, for which there may be only a few million, ever do get threatened, this is our backup plan. Yeah.
just jumping from one camera to the next. No, they don't seem to be overheating at the moment. But those are things that you never know what technology you have until you test it in the field. Okay. The back left side. Okay. I'm just looking at some of the comments here. I'm just going to go back to Facebook. Yeah, go on, David.
Well,
please.
one of the things, Terry took us out in their boat today, and we looked at this lake in front of the net. You can maybe have seen it in wide-angle shots. The lake was full of fish. I was so impressed. They said they were squawfish. They were fish that were 2.5 to 3.5 pounds. They were huge, but there were schools of them. They spoke of several other species of fish in this lake. So this is a very productive lake. Apparently there's something like 9 or 11 pairs of ospreys near here and 2 pairs of eagles nearby. So you only get that when you get a really, really productive waterway. It's producing the protein to raise all the ospreys and the eagles, and of course the ground around it, the little marshes around this lake and everything, and the understory here under the brush is good for raising mice in the lowland for voles. So lots of food. So it's red tails, ospreys, eagles. So many things. I suspected we were here very long. We'd see we were particularly here earlier in the year. We'd see a lot of Cooper's hawks here as well.
Yeah, and the gentleman goes has an interesting question, and maybe you know the answer of this one. He's talking about redwood tree parks that are in this area, and do any raptors actually, or birds of prey, nest in those huge redwood trees? Do you know that, David?
Well, I don't, but I'm almost certain they would, particularly along the coast and the coastal beaches, where really that's the common tree. And while I've not actually gone and observed a lot in that area, at home we're planting redwood trees to be the fastest growing future nest support trees, because they're different. They're harder for the bird to nest in because of the structure of the branching. It's very easy to cut out a branch or two, and a redwood tree can grow 120 feet in about 40 to 45 years. I mean, they're incredibly fast growing. And in our area, which used to be predominantly a Douglas fir forest, it's all changing so rapidly that I think that the redwood tree is probably going to be a more dominant tree, and it certainly grows faster than our Douglas fir. So we're planting redwoods for the next generation of bald eagles.
Oh, that's a good answer. Here, Jolie is asking, where does the hawk sleep at night if it's afraid of its siblings and so on? Would it sleep in the nest?
Well, I don't think it has a lot of options. Yeah, the nest is probably about 6 feet across. This is not a huge nest, may only be 5.5 feet across. So there's not a lot of places it could go. But there is something else that's positive about that issue, and that is, come nightfall, the chicks are usually well fed. And so they go to bed with a full stomach. They go to bed with a full crop. And so there's less aggression between them if they're fully fed. And so then they simply go to bed and hunker down for the night. It's dark. These are not nocturnal birds. They're diurnal birds. And so they wake up at the crack of dawn waiting for the parents to bring them in food, which is when they're most likely to bring in food, is at the crack of dawn.
And another question, thanks for all your questions, by the way, and thanks for all the donations which will go for this live stream, together with the support from the DVE store, which is very generous. Here, Katie48 is asking, what do they think the hawk, what do you think the hawk will live on food? What do you think the hawk will live on food? Well, this is a good question, right? Once it fledges and goes, is the question, will it behave like an eagle? What do you think, David?
Well, I think it will behave like a red tail. I don't think it's going to learn fishing techniques. I just don't think that's in its repertoire. It might scrounge a dead fish or something along the shoreline if it lived long enough, but I think they're going to switch to their own food quite quickly. In the second and third day of the fledging of the red tail at Sydney, that bird was taking roadkills that we laid out on a field and taking mice in a little compound coming down in voles that we were putting in there from the pet store. So, I mean, they learn to hunt in their natural ways, I think, more so than they would learn to hunt in the system of another long evolved species. A bald eagle hunts basically fish and dead things, and a red-tailed hawk is basically going to hunt ground squirrels, rodents of one kind or another, depending on where it is in North America. Got to remember, the red tail is incredibly versatile. It goes from Florida to California, from Alaska to Newfoundland. It covers much of the continent, which bodes well for its versatility. It's getting dozens and dozens of different species over its range, so it's got an inherent adaptability to it. It's like the eagle. I mean, the eagle catches many kinds of fish, each of which presents different challenges for spotting, for capturing, and it catches many kinds of roadkills and dead and so on creatures. So they're both very versatile birds.
A quick question out to Harrison Mills, David.
Yeah.
Michelle wants to know from David what he thinks may have happened over the Harrison Mills nest this year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to say troubling, but it's not really troubling. It's puzzling is the right word. I had 7 nests in a row along Crescent Beach that failed. They all failed. Now, is it something to do with the year? We had a couple of unusual things that may have contributed to this, but we don't really know. The first unusual thing, we had a very cold winter at home. Cold and clear. Now, much of the continent gets cold, clear weather, and their winters are not only cold, but they're sunny.
Well, the hawk that just flew back, they saw it. It just flew back.
Yes, I see it. It's got his wings.
They saw it.
Yeah.
It was full.
Good.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
you saw this.
I see him there now. He's got his wings up on. I'm just going to put my binoculars on. Yeah, he's just in front of the pole, the center pole of the tree.
We got him. Well, fantastic. So we had that live. That was what I was hoping for. They see something like this live.
So just to finish that story, this year in Canada, on Lower Fraser Valley, we had a lot of clear winter nights that are cold and days that were cold. And that meant there was more hours of sunshine this winter than usual. And for some reason or other, in spite of the very cold spring, our birds nested generally 2 weeks earlier than they ever did before. Most of them did. And now, why do they nest when it's colder and more, in some ways, more miserable? Well, I think they got more light early on in the winter, and that light amount of day length, the length of daylight, is what triggered their pituitary glands and turned their breeding apparatus on a bit early. Now, did that contribute to a kind of confusion? Did maybe the male come into season more quickly or less quickly than the female, and they weren't in sync, and therefore so many of them didn't produce proper eggs? I don't know. We just had an unusual amount of failure in several areas in the coast. Now, other areas were wonderfully productive. So these are not simple questions, and the answers are even more difficult to come up with.
Amanda wants to know about this, Amanda Price.
Oh yeah, well, so point of
sorry.
so my finishing point.
Okay.
Yeah, she asked about the Harrison Mills nest.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
That pair, as you know, went through both pairs being changed. The female was killed, or the male was killed, and then a new male came in. Then there was a new female, and then another new male. So they went through a lot of losses. And getting everybody back into sync when there has been a change of partners is not always easy, particularly, and I really want to stress this, particularly in an area like Harrison Mills. This is the area of North America that has the largest concentration of wintering eagles. That little river, the Harrison River, right in front of our Harrison Mills nest, can have 10 or 15,000 eagles on it at a time for a month and a half on edge in the middle of winter, because there's so many spawned out salmon carcasses. All that is taking place when our birds are starting their nesting, and even up to when they're laying their eggs. What an incredible conflict. You've got a pair trying to hold a territory, and around them they can see 1,000 eagles, or 2,000, or 5,000 close by. I mean, that always strikes me as an incredible conflict of being a territorial species and having all these wintering birds who are not yet interested in breeding at all, but they're still here because they're going to go and nest 2 months, 3 months later up in the high Arctic. And of course, it isn't even going to be thawed where their fish would be swimming from out from under the ice until we've got young eaglets already. So there's this conflict. The Harrison River is the greatest wintering area. It's also got 9 pairs of eagles just in a very small area as well. So it's a great breeding area, but it's also the world's biggest wintering area. So that's a conflict.
Okay, Amanda Price wants to know from you. Hi, Amanda in Texas. She wants to know, are you going to follow this eagle hawk nest carefully to prove or disprove some similarities or differences to the Sydney nest?
Well, that's a big challenge. I mean, we're a lot farther from home at the moment. We've got a neighbor, Kit, who's our wonderful host, who's putting us up at the moment. But I also have a challenge because I'm about to have my knee replaced in 10 days from now. So I have to be home and into a hospital to have a new knee. And so I'm kind of walking around here as a bit of a gimp. And I still have to drive home another 1,000 or 900 miles. So I think we're not going to be able to hang around here for quite the same length of time as we did at the other nest.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, that goes for your compliment, David, because these comments are coming in because people don't notice how, because you're so agile, that you actually have these, physical challenges. Which, wow.
Well, I don't feature the physical challenges. I feature being physically active. The challenges are just challenges, and you overcome them. And getting a new knee, like I got another one 8 years ago, I'm about to get this one replaced, and then I'll be back both knees well.
By the way, they have a beautiful view now on the large screen of the Hawklet in the middle, just at the at the center of the tree, and to the left one of the siblings. David's just looking with his binoculars. It's a very nice view, something we didn't have yesterday, by the way. So it's so that answers the question: does the Hawklet come back into the nest? Yes, it does. Okay, so I think, David, we've streamed about an hour.
Yep.
And I think we are. I'm just going to go in front of the. Yeah, go in front of the camera, please, David.
Me?
So-
Oh, heaven
Yes.
forbid.
1 second.
There we are.
I'm just going to get you ready. 1 second, and then we'll.
You're going to get me ready. That's a challenge.
Okay, we're gonna
That's
just
a
switch
real
to-
challenge.
Well, that's anyway. That's David Hancock wearing my hat, by the way, from South Africa. So, anyway, that's wonderful, David, who has given the incredible narration. So this has been incredible. So thank you so much for being with us in the live stream, and also for David for making it all this way, and for Terry and for Kit for giving all the wonderful logos.
But it's the
Go
other
ahead.
way around, because when Terry called me and told me about the first thing I was going to do, but you actually ended up on my doorstep within a few minutes of it, hearing of potentially what you thought was another eagle. I said, well, let's go. And you said, yes, why not? And so I don't often have as enthusiastic a partner as I have with Christian.
Right,
So
I'm just gonna turn
kudos
this-
to Christian.
Well, there.
Oh, there you are.
we
I'm
can
in the-
see each other,
yeah.
so you can see
Oh,
where I
there you are.
am.
Yeah, there you are.
David's a bit taller than me.
No, that's not true. He's 6'4", and I'm only.
6'5",
I was
actually.
6'2", 6'5", and I'm 6'2", and
right.
shrunk down to 6'1.5". I just learned. So there you go.
Yeah, well,
and we have Kit behind the screen,
Yeah,
taking pictures.
She's
of
taking
us.
pictures
Yeah.
of.
All right.
All right, well, thank you very much. I'm going to just leave 5 minutes with the larger. I'm just going to, Osprey Monitor, just can you put the contrast a bit better? I will adjust the contrast, just give me a second. I'll give you a few minutes view of that, and would like to thank you from all our hearts for being with us, supporting this educational channel, and also those who have so kindly donated. There's some who have donated yesterday and today, and I've seen that. Thank you so much for all that. It's really helpful. Streaming is unfortunately extremely expensive, especially at this quality. So that really comes to help. So thanks off, thanks, my hat off to all of you, and thanks.
My hat off to you.
Okay, so I'm just going to switch over to the other camera, and thanks all to David. Okay.
Thank you kindly. Bye-bye.
So we're just going to go on the other, and I'm just going to give them a few moments. I'm just going to adjust, I'm just going to adjust the screen a little bit here. Let's see, get a bit of a better view. Yeah, I think that contrast is a little bit better. So I'm just going to quickly read your comments. Oh, that's been quite something to do this again. And thanks for being with us. It's really been wonderful. So yeah, the contrast is adjusted now. And I'm just going to quickly look once more on YouTube. And thank you for all your participation and so on. Really been wonderful, and also on Facebook, by the way. So I'm going to say goodbye to all of you. Also to Facebook, I see Rachel, Addie, Cheryl, Sophia, Sue, Andrea is there. Very nice. Hi, Andrea. Melody, Carrie, Karen, Cheryl, and so on. Samantha. And so on. Thank you very much for being with us, and it was so enjoyable having you here. And if everything goes well, we'll try it again tomorrow. It's a lot of work setting it up, so I have to now dismantle everything and bring it back to the car and get everything ready again. But I'm going to spend the rest of the evening now trying to take some beautiful images, because that's also what I'm there for. And those who have done donations, it's not too late to do some more donations, by the way. And Osprey Mama will put the Gmail address is SassePhoto@gmail.com into the chats, and then I will give me a few days and I'll happily send you some images. I'm going to work on it right now. Okay, so thanks everyone.